So what should you do instead of static stretching? What are our better options? Well, I think the first point of reference you should have is, why is your range of motion restricted? Why do you feel like you need to do static stretching, right? So if your range of motion is restricted, we need to figure out, is it protective kind of tightness because you've got an issue elsewhere? And so this range of motion is restricted in order to protect you from an injury, right? So that'd be the first thing to figure out. So that might be going and getting assessed by a professional or doing some self-assessments there, all right? That'd be the first point. The second point is, if it actually is kind of a shortened muscle, right, then where do we go from there? So I think kind of the first place to go would be eccentrics, right? Whereas with static stretching, we're really getting this kind of neurological effect where we're gonna get some passive range of motion increase, but we're really not changing the muscle fibers in any way. With eccentrics, what we're doing is we're actually adding sarcomeres in series, so we have a longer muscle at that point, right? Which is what we're looking for if we have a shortened muscle fiber. The second piece would be long duration isometrics if you have too much stiffness, right? So if you're a guy or your athlete is a guy who's getting injured all the time because their tendons are too stiff, right? They're a really powerful guy, they're really quick off the ground. What you're gonna see is we're getting more muscle strains and pulls and tears because that tendon isn't really stretching enough, right? So we need a more compliant tendon. So long duration isometrics can be a good option there because we will get a more compliant tendon kind of doing that stuff. The next option would be end range isometric holds, right? Or oscillations at an end range. In both cases, we're doing slightly different things, but with the end range isometric hold, what we're doing is we're adding strength to that end range, right? We're kind of holding that end range either against resistance, whether it's gravity or a band or weight or manual resistance. We can kind of do some things there to kind of gain strength at end range of motion, be able to apply force over a greater range of motion, which may enhance velocity. The other piece there is oscillating isometrics. What we may get is a little bit more elasticity in this kind of joint and in this end range as well, which can be helpful in terms of applying force quickly and taking better advantage of the stretch shortening cycle. That can be very helpful. The next piece, right, probably the most obvious one and the simplest one, is using full range of motion training, right? So train through a full range of motion. Full depth squats, whatever that may mean for you, that's gonna look a little different for everybody. Full range of motion pressing, push-ups, things like that. So for example, with push-ups or dumbbell bench, one of the things that you'll see is a lot of people stop short. So with push-ups, the ground stops you. So you're really not probably getting through a full range of motion. Whether you stack your hands up on plates or use dumbbells or something like that, adding range of motion there can be a really helpful tool. The other thing is when we're talking about pressing, dumbbell bench pressing, let's make sure we're going all the way down to that full range of motion. So again, full range of motion is gonna be a little bit different for everybody because we don't wanna see just kind of that shoulder just knocking forward. We wanna be able to control that range of motion, right? Where we're actually getting kind of true horizontal abduction there and kind of training through a full range of motion. And then the final piece would be mobility drills or functional range conditioning type movements, right? So these can be, end range hip extension where we're kind of rocking through a full range of motion there to kind of get that end range hip extension. Or it may be like shoulder cars, things like that. A lot of the stuff that Dr. Andrew Spina has put out are really good for kind of increasing that mobility as well. So all of these are better options than static stretching for most people when we're talking about enhancing range of motion functionally and actually enhancing performance on the field.